Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Pepin, and I am the sports editor at the Boston Globe. And welcome to tonight's Zoom presentation for our Boston Globe subscribers, featuring Gary Washburn, who is the Globe's NBA writer and Celtics writer, as well as Mark Spears from ESPN, who is also inside the bubble with Gary. And they've been covering the NBA since July. Since the July restart in the bubble in Orlando. So we thought we would bring them to you live from Orlando to give you some really good insight about what it's like, the basketball they've seen, what the bubble's like, and everything. I'd like to start by introducing our guests, and I'll start with Mark Spears of ESPN, who is a former Boston Globe writer himself. Mark, maybe you could just give a quick greeting and your professional background.
Yeah, Mark Spears. I'm a senior NBA writer for ESPN's The Undefeated. Been covering NBA now for 21 seasons, which included a stint at the Boston Globe from 2007 to 9, where I covered the championship team. Also covered the Denver Nuggets for 8 years, and was with Yahoo for 7 before making a jump to the Undefeated. But no, man, I definitely miss Boston, and wish we could be going to these Eastern Conference Finals games in Beantown right now, but such isn't the case.
Great. Well, thanks very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. I know your time's valuable, so we'll keep this on track. And I'd also like to introduce Gary Washburn, the Globe's reporter for the NBA and the Celtics. He has also been in the bubble since July. Gary, quick professional background for yourself as well.
I've been at the Globe for 10 years now, since 2009, so it's 11 years, where I've covered the Celtics and the NBA. Before that, I was at the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, where I covered the last 3 years of the Seattle Supersonics. Before then, I was at MajorLeagueBaseball.com, where I covered the Orioles for 4 years and took a lot of trips to Boston. And then before then, I covered the Oakland A's during the Moneyball era from 98 to 01, where they won 2 division titles and lost the Yankees both times in playoffs. So I was there for the Jeter play. That's probably the play that stands out the most during my time there. So it's great to be here. Hopefully, the fans will definitely get a taste of life in the bubble.
Great. Thanks for joining us. I can see that you're probably courtside. Before we get started with the basketball, though, I do want to mention to our audience that Gary and Mark have a book coming out next week. And so I'd like to ask you guys both to share a little bit of insight for our audience about the book.
The Spencer Haywood Rule was a book that Gary and I started working on summer last year, and it's obviously about Spencer Haywood, the Hall of Famer. Very interesting personality from small town Mississippi. Grew up fatherless. His dad died just after he was born. Picked cotton from his youth. Basically had to leave Mississippi in order to save his life and chasing as well as chase his basketball dreams. And then he ended up becoming a surprise selection to the 1968 Olympic team, which certainly had a lot of history. And I'll let Gary talk about the rest of that because he took care of the rest of the book.
Great. Yeah, Gary, you want to give us a little intel on your contribution to it?
Yeah, I was able to focus on Spencer was the first player to enter the draft and play in the NBA without finishing his college eligibility. In the early 70s and late 60s, there was players were not supposed to or not allowed to enter the draft early. You had to enter the draft. You didn't have to go to college, but you did have to enter the draft 4 years after you finished high school. So there was no hardship cases. They were called hardship cases because players could claim that they needed to make money to help their family. And in Spencer's case, that was the case because his mother was picking cotton in Mississippi at the time that he wanted to come out of the University of Detroit. So he went to the Supreme Court, and one of the votes that he received in favor of playing the NBA was from the great Thurgood Marshall. And he happened to meet Thurgood Marshall, went out to dinner with him, obviously almost nearly 50 years ago in Baltimore. And so his journey is just amazing. the NBA owners definitely did not want young African-American men, 19 and 20 years old, into the league. They wanted to keep the league as it was, which was mostly white. And so Spencer got a lot of resistance from trying to make the move. He got resistance from owners and NBA people. He also got resistance from fellow players who thought that he was in there to take their spot. Veteran NBA players were wary of him and other guys from inner cities, you know, who were talented enough to play in the NBA, that they thought that they would take the limited spots that there were for African-American players. So his journey is interesting. Played a lot of years with the NBA, had some personal issues, but was able to come out of those and obviously be voted in 2015 to the Naismith Hall of Fame. And he set the groundwork for players like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Kevin Garnett, anyone on the court tonight, you know, from Anthony Davis to LeBron to Rajon Rondo. All those guys left school early because of the groundwork and the Spencer Haywood rule.
Andy was married to Amon.
Yeah, he was married and has a child with Amon, the supermodel. So yeah, that's another wrinkle to the story. Spencer's lived a Forrest Gump type of life, a very fascinating life. He's been a lot of places, done a lot of things, and he's still in great health now, still getting, you know, out there representing the NBA. So it's good to see him receive these accolades when he's still alive and he's still able to appreciate them, as opposed to when he's gone, because he's definitely set an example for a lot of players. And at the All-Star game, Kevin Garnett, when he was talking with the media, doing a lot of opportunities, said, hey, let's not forget that Spencer Haywood was the one who started all of it, enabled me to come out of high school, and no one said a word, because players of then obviously were allowed to come out of high school.
Yeah. It sounds really interesting. Wish you guys the best of luck with the book. I believe you said it comes out October 1st, right?
October 6th.
October 6th. All right,
Yeah.
great.
On Amazon.
Amazon.
We're going to include the link to the book in the post event email that comes out to all of our subscribers who are visiting with us tonight. So here's the way I thought we'd do it: is we only have an hour and have to wrap up by 7. So I thought I'll ask you guys some questions to start, and at 6:30 we'll turn it over to the reader questions that have been submitted to us, and we'll go from 6:30 to 7 then, and then we'll have to call it a night, and you guys can get down to watching the Western Conference Final game tonight. But I thought would start with some topics for discussion. The reason we're here: what has it been like in the bubble? How long have you guys been there, and what was it like at first? And how has it evolved over the time that you've been there? Like, what changes have happened, and just in every aspect, how has it evolved over the time you've been there?
Well, Gary and I both arrived on July 12th, and I kind of got wind from some people that were staying there already that they weren't giving up many king beds. So I actually waited 45 minutes upon my arrival. I was like, I need a king bed. I definitely need a king bed. So it took a while for them to give me that. Sorry. Hey, Gary, mute your line. You got all those people talking about. So I finally got that. And then my thing was to make my room like something that I would be comfortable with on a daily basis. We're here for 3 months. So I got a toaster oven to cook the food after I learned like a lot of the food wasn't, it could have been more well cooked to be, in my opinion. I got a coffee maker. I grind my own beans, make my own coffee. I got a wine fridge. Josh Hart, actually from the Pelicans, he recommended that I get a wine fridge because he knew I was a big wine guy. I got a humidifier. Just trying to bring a PlayStation 4. Eventually, I was able to like convince some Disney people to give me a bicycle. We're here for 3 months. We're in like a room that it's not like the players. The players have the best of everything. They're staying in a Ritz-Carlton type hotel. We're staying in like a Ramada type hotel. So I just wanted to make it very, very comfortable that when I was in my room that obviously you're going to miss home, but you have a lot of things from home to make it feel normal. Like I get up, I make my coffee, I get my COVID test, try to keep a routine. I actually even watch the local news in the Bay Area because I live in Oakland on my iPad. Just stuff to kind of make me feel like home, even though I haven't been there in a while.
Right. And Gary, maybe you can talk too about what it's been like for you there, but also it's probably important to mention the first 7 days you guys were there, you had to stay in those rooms and could not leave, even crossing the threshold of the door, right?
Yeah, we literally could not, we were quarantined, we literally could not leave our rooms. So they came to test us they'd knock on our door and they would come to test us every day. So that was interesting. So we literally could not walk outside. We could walk out the door and look, and then when they delivered our breakfast, they would just knock on the door, then you would open the door, then there'd be like a bag of food there. So you literally would have to go through your food and essentially like, okay, I can eat this, I don't want to eat this. You know, the food was not good. I think Mark will definitely attest to that. The food that they gave us there was terrible. And so it was a little limiting. And then obviously we were, just like, once we got out, it was definite freedom in a sense. And then here's 22 teams practicing, all the access you want. We like Mark said, we change rooms to get a more comfortable room, and then you just start working every day. But you can't leave the campus. You take the buses. You take your temperature, oxygen saturation, and your temperature every day, and you also go get COVID tested. And not the stuff that everyone's like, well, how does the test go? They don't stick the thing 2 inches up your nose. Not that one. It's pretty, decent where they swab our mouth and swab our nose every day. So I think today was my 71st test in a row. You test every day. If you don't, you cannot get into the facilities. The NBA is not messing around with us here. Players, anybody, if you don't test, you can't go to work. So it's been a great experience. It's something I don't think we'll ever do again. So, and it's a historic experience. But yeah, I mean, eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because the food is not good, and then they give you a potpourri of snacks. So if you're on some kind of dietary restriction or you're like, I don't eat, you go against that. I've ate stuff here I haven't eaten in years, Doritos, because you're just hungry and you might miss dinner, and you're like, okay, there's the snacks. Let me see, Doritos, what's the best bad snack I can eat? Okay, popcorn, Doritos, Lay's chips, baked Lay's chips, brownies, muffin, apple Danish. Like, there's not much good for you. I mean, and the fruit's old, Mark will admit. Like, there's some old bananas, old, like, rotted oranges. Like, you're like, is this serious right now? Like it's funny, but it's been an experience.
Yeah, I'm laughing with you, not at you, Gary, for sure. Can you guys give a little bit of an overview of how big the bubble is? Like, where are you guys located? I know you said that you're in a hotel, but like, where are you located, and what are the other venues you travel to, and where can you go, and like what bubble sounds like this one encapsulated place, but in fact it's really more of a campus of locations.
Well, we're at a place called the Coronado Springs Hotel and Resort, where we're staying at. There's 3 hotels here. There's a Casitas where we're staying, which it's kind of, like I said, kind of like staying at a Ramada or a Courtyard maybe, where you walk outside and open the door, you're outside. Players are more like a Four Seasons type of hotel called the Destino. There's also another hotel on this property called the Ranchos, just similar to where the media is staying, but nobody is using it. It's completely empty right now. So it's like a circle. In the middle of this hotel area is a big, like, a little pond, I guess you could say. And so there's also a street, like a circle that goes around it. Gary jogs around it. I ride a bike around it. For the media, there's not a whole lot to do. We have one swimming pool, another swimming pool we had at the Ranchos. They closed on us. We just recently we're able to start using a bar. And I think primarily it was because so many teams had departed that the bar needed to make some more money. So they decided to let the media use that and the gift shop. When there were 22 teams, there were a lot of teams staying at 2 other hotels. They actually had a barbershop that was outdoors. It was enclosed in glass. It's a beautiful barbershop. And they had different activities. So you could go there to golf. The media was allowed to golf. You could even go fishing. And Gary and I went fishing a bunch of times. And 2 weeks ago or last Sunday, they cut it off because of the 2 extra hotels, which were the Grand Floridian and God, I forgot the other hotel. They closed them because there weren't any teams left. And so now the location where we are is housing the 4 remaining teams, the media, the NBA, like we're all now in one area. And the other hotels where the NBA was staying, now they're opened up for regular business. I do think that us arriving has certainly been a big help to a lot of the locals here who were not working. But now from talking to some of the workers, there was a lady working in our mail room on Sunday who told me she was being furloughed on Monday because now that the majority of the teams, remember, they went from 22 teams to 4, there's not as much work to do. A lot of teams left the other hotels empty. So they're slowly cutting down, which means that they're probably going to cut down employees who have kind of been saved a lot by the bubble.
And so throughout, like you mentioned, Mark, there have been a lot of teams to start, 22 teams and all the media and the other support staff that comes through. So Gary, why has the NBA been so successful in terms of few, if any, positive test results? What do they go through every day to ensure the safety for, in particular, the NBA personnel, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, they treat us all the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you take your temperature and your oxygen in a phone app. You have to download I think 3 different apps onto your phone. Once you get, they give you directions. They gave us like eight NBA sponsored masks to wear. Like one I have on now is one of the ones that the league gave us. And then they had boxes of these little thinner masks that people have been wearing all over too. You can see those with a bunch of NBA logos on them. So they gave us directions of how to kind of the whole medical thing. You sign up here, you sign up at this website, you give them your email. So if by noon I don't take my oxygen and temperature, they send me a text message like, hey man, you haven't taken it yet. What do you, don't you think it's time? Like, and you're like, okay, it's like an auto text. By a certain time, if you don't do that, they remind you. And then if you don't test, you can't get into facilities. They give us these bands, not my watch here, but this gray band with the Mickey logo on it. That's not for fun. We don't get into the rides. We can't get into the park with it. We can't, it's just not for fun. I don't get 2 free drinks with this, nothing. This gets us into the facilities. If we don't test, it turns blue. You don't want it to turn blue, because they'll make you go back to your hotel and test. And it's the same with the players. I think Nerlens Noel, obviously a local kid, he ended up missing a game because he didn't test. If you don't test, they consider it like they consider it a quarantine. Like, okay, you didn't test. Well, why didn't you test? And the medical people aren't playing. Mark has stories. I have stories about the medical people who, it's like they have 2 things. Like they give us these questionnaires every day, and they say, have you been in touch with someone who's had you think might have COVID? If you accidentally hit yes and then submit it, like the league is calling you 10 minutes later, like, where are you? Who are you? Who'd you talk? Like, they are not playing. Like with us, with NBA people, with players. So I know why they've been so successful, because they've been on our butts about it, which is great. Like if you, any building we enter this building for the Western Conference Finals, you scan this and it turns green. Practices, same thing. Anything. When Mark and I went fishing, we had to scan this. Like, they don't let you go anywhere unless you've tested and you're fine. And I think that's why the NBA has had so much successful, because they've been paying the butts to us, but that's the way they have to be, and we all understand that.
Yeah. I would imagine you feel pretty safe in that environment.
Yeah, it's the safest place on earth. Like Mark was saying too, like we talk to our family members, like, be safe down there. I'm safe. I ain't got no problems. I'm safe. I feel good. Like I'm negative. Everyone else is negative. Like the people that are in the media members that are in the B or the tier 2, they call them, we can't touch them. Like we can wave at them. We can give them a high five, a hello, a finger point, a thumbs up. We can't get within 6 feet of them because they don't test every day. Everyone that we come in contact with gets tested every day. So this is the safest place on earth. I mean, it's not the happiest place on earth like Disney usually is, but it is the safest place on earth. So I don't have no problem being safe. You will be safe down there. Like it's COVID everywhere. Like it's not, no, the league has made sure everybody is safe.
And I actually think that when we do leave here and we see the light at the end of the tunnel right now, we're going to be nervous. Like I can only imagine when we get out of here how freaked out we're going to be. I've talked to one of my colleagues. She said when she got out, she was just freaking out at the airport, being near anybody that didn't have their mask on. And, so, and for me, I got to fly across the country to get back home. I got to fly to San Francisco. So I could see myself when I get back just kind of going into hiding and not, even though I miss a lot of people and want to see a lot of people, I'm scared of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't blame you there.
Like we're not trying to have lunch with you just now, Matt, when we get out, but don't take it personal. Maybe the next coming month.
Okay, I'll pay off what I owe you guys for doing this some other time down the road, all right?
All right.
So what is it like being at the games without fans? I would imagine you've heard some pretty interesting things from being so close, but not having that fan noise and whatnot. And as journalists, that must be great for you to be privy to what's, the sort of like the real organic NBA game.
Well, I was at the game when William Rondo, Rajon Rondo's brother, who Bostonians are quite familiar with, got into it with Russell Westbrook. William called him trash, told him he was trash, and gave him a goodbye because, the Rockets were about to get knocked out. And I think Russ was probably being a little bitter, got some get back. And, we'll see if Williams at the game tonight. He hasn't been at the first 2 games, but maybe they'll give him finally a, free William Rondo and let him come to the game tonight. It'll be interesting to see. But we would like to hear more, but they pump in so much super loud crowd noise that a lot of times you got to read a player's lips. It's kind of hard to hear them, but we certainly are a lot closer to the floor now than we typically would be because of these odd, games under this circumstance.
Before we turn to reader questions, the one other one I wanted to ask you guys was, a big moment was when the NBA paused to focus on social justice and racial inequality. And you guys were firsthand witnesses to a lot of that. And I wanted to know what were the discussions like behind the scenes and, which players and NBA personnel were the key figures involved in taking the actions that they did. Your experiences from that part of the bubble experience.
It was fascinating because it was just kind of if you guys recall, the Celtics and Raptors were the ones talking about maybe particularly boycotting. Fred VanVleet George Hill on a Monday night, and I know Mark was there, was kind of like, I don't even see why we're here. This is kind of useless. Like we're not serving our purpose because the Jacob Blake video had just been kind of gone viral. And the players started seeing that, and we're like, wait a minute, all the stuff we're talking about, Black Lives Matter, and kneeling for the anthem, and wearing the slogans on our jerseys, obviously people are still being, shot in the street, and police brutality is still happening. So they felt very useless and they were frustrated. So that Monday night, that's what George Hill said. Then Tuesday, when it was like kind of prepping for the Celtics Raptors, which was going to start Thursday, Fred VanVleet was in a real solid mood during his media session, was like, man, I don't even want to talk about basketball. Like, I don't even know what to say. I saw this video. I'm disturbed. He's a guy from the Midwest, and I know Mark knows him well, that he was extremely disturbed by it. And then Norman Powell. And so it was kind of the Celtics and Raptors were supposed to meet that night and potentially boycott their game one, which is on Thursday. So they met. So we were all kind of, it was a Wednesday afternoon. It was Orlando, Milwaukee. And the way it is here, you can, sign up to attend games. So you can walk into a game as a media member. The league is not encouraging that. They want to know what media members are going to show up. So every day they have us send them an email. Okay, I want to go to this game, this practice, this practice. So it was Milwaukee. It was a closeout game, if I believe, against the Magic. It was a 4 o'clock game. So not a lot of media members were like running to get, because there were other captivating games. It was the Thunder Rockets that night and also the Lakers Blazers. So people were going to go to those. But suddenly I was in my room, and I think Mark the same. All of a sudden I'm flipping on NBA TV and they're like, the Bucks haven't walked on the court. It's 20 minutes before, 10 minutes before. And then all of a sudden it was like, uh-oh, the Bucks are not going to play. So all of us jumped on the 4:30 bus, because this bus is every half hour to the arena. We all jumped on the 4:30 bus, and we all kind of waited outside the Bucks locker room as they kind of met and discussed things. And it was pretty obvious they weren't going to play, because the Magic players started going back to their hotel. And then the Thunder and the Rockets were at the other arena, and they showed up and was like, well, if they're not going to play, we're not going to play. So then it just turned into a huge situation. The league was shocked. Everybody was kind of like, what's going on here? And the Bucks released a statement, and then it turned into, well, do they even want to play again at all? So it became a national and international news story, because they seriously considered walking out on the season.
Mark, what was your take on that period of time during the bubble experience?
It was certainly very emotional. I do remember the Bucks guard George Hill basically saying, "I'm tired of these crooked ass cops. I don't know why we're here." And that's when I started feeling like, okay, something might be brewing. I remember Wednesday morning talking to some Raptors, talking to some Celtics players, and they're like, "Yeah, we're going to meet for the second time tonight, and we may not play." I also remember Doc Rivers on that Tuesday night gave a really, really emotional plea about police brutality and racism, and which I think will certainly be something that is talked about for a long time. So I was actually kind of keeping my eye on that Bucks game. I just had a feeling. I had text with George Hill earlier in the day, and he wouldn't tell me via text, but when I was asking him if he was going to play, he wouldn't respond. And I know George pretty well, and so the fact that he wasn't saying anything kind of like tipped me off. So I was like rushing to get ready. When I was watching pregame, what was going on, I'm like, he's not playing. They're not playing. And I found out later that George Hill actually had a lunch meeting with the Bucks coaching staff and told him that he wasn't going to play. He gets to the arena, Sterling Brown from the Bucks joined forces with him, and then George basically, with about 14 minutes left, told his team, what do you guys want to do? And they all decided to stand together. So they got some heat from some of the other teams in terms of, why didn't you guys let us know what you were going to do? But what happened with Jacob Blake happened in their home state. They happened to have the earlier game. I think it was a emotional decision, but it ended up being an amazing decision that, kind of was like, I don't know, the 1968 Olympics when they put their fists up, because the rest of the NBA shut down. The WNBA missed games. Major League Baseball, NHL, Naomi Osaka, all of them took a stand. And I think that's when they realized, wow, people are listening. Our voices are being heard. But we need to do this in a better fashion. So that's when they shifted what they were doing and put their focus on voting. I also had the impression that they were going to push more against, stopping police brutality. But I think right now they're realizing that voting is the real thing, that they can make some immediate change while they're in the bubble. So once they started playing 3 days later, you saw voting signs and digitally in the arena. You saw PSAs about voting. Players were wearing shirts that say vote. And so I think they intelligently decided that if they were going to make an impact on society, pushing people to register to vote and to vote was probably the biggest thing.
A powerful moment for sure. Thank you both for your insight on that. So now I'd like to switch over. We have many questions submitted by our subscribers, and we appreciate that. And I'd like to start with this one because many of them, a common theme was about the food in the bubble. And I know you touched on it a little bit, but I'd like to come back to it. Has there been anything good?
Well, I think the thing that's best is takeout. So I've been eating a lot from this place called Sofritos, the Latin place. They have an amazing whole fish. So that's been pretty good. The problem with most of the takeout is it has a pretty hefty delivery charge, about $35 in like hefty prices. So the Sofritos one is, I like Latin food and it's the best bang for your buck. There's also a soul food restaurant called Sienna's, I believe, but they only serve on Mondays and Tuesdays. So on our app that we have, or an NBA app, we can order takeout. But when you have games like this, like I actually got Sofritos at 5 o'clock. I paid early, asked them if they could deliver at 5, rode my bike to get my food, came back and ate before the show. And if not, then you got to go to the regular dining, and I call it what mama's cooking. You ain't got no clue what it's going to be there, and you go in there, and you might be something you like, might not be something you like. It's like, spin the wheel on dinner. So I shouldn't tell Gary this because he might get a little upset, but there's this restaurant called Three Bridges Restaurant. It's a restaurant in the water in between all the hotels, and it's connected by 3 bridges. And I've had a couple people that I've gotten some hookup from who have gotten food for me from there. And they have an amazing steak and eggs.
Yeah, I ain't got no problem with that, Mark. I mean, whatever you got to do. Out here, people like, how's the food? Like, the NBA said they'll feed us for free. So, okay, like, props to the NBA. But the food is average at best. And then, like Mark said, you have no idea what they're going to serve. And then they put these food in these little, like, to-go containers that are kind of small. So you're like, okay, that's it? Like, can I go back? Like, can I go back for seconds? Like, it's not a buffet style. It's not all that healthy. A lot of starches. If you're on some kind of dietary restrictions, you just got to give it up out here. It's somewhat, I don't say it's survival, but it's just certain things like if you go to a game, like the Celtics have been playing a lot at 6:30. So they serve food here at the arena from 6 to 7:30. Like 7:30, like we're 7 years old. Like we got to go to bed at 8. Like I don't know who stopped serving food at 7:30. Like literally. So before a Celtic game, I had to go up to and get dinner at 6, and I either better be hungry or I can eat afterwards or maybe at halftime. If not, you're not going to eat unless you want to eat all the snacks you want for dinner. You want barbecue chips for dinner? They got all plenty. If you want the Rice Krispies treat with the Mickey ears on them and chocolate, I heard those things are like really addicting. I haven't touched one, thank goodness. They got plenty of those. Brownies, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I haven't eaten this much peanut butter and jelly since I was 12 years old. Danishes, stuff that's not good for you. But at this point, you're hungry, so you're like, what's the best, worst thing I can eat? Like, what's the most healthiest, terriblest thing? Because, okay, baked Lay's chips. All right, Doritos. Okay, that's only 200 calories. Like, you don't eat that in the street, in the regular everyday life. You try to eat healthy. We're not getting any younger. This thing, it's just changed your entire palate. Like, we're all going to need to go back home and dry out because, they got all the water and the drinks, But you talking about like, and they have like boiled eggs. Okay, I guess I'll have some boiled eggs for dinner. And let me get some salt. And, like, you make the best out. Or if you go back to your room and Mark knows his feeling, and you had 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches from the day before, you're like, oh yeah, I got PB&J. Like, if not, they have room service open till 2, but it costs. As I explained, you know, Matt, like, we talked about this earlier, like the food is so bad that sometimes you got to order room service and the room service is not healthy. It's burgers, wings. So we're not eating healthy down here. But, oh, the players, that's different. They're getting stuff catered in from beautiful, nice restaurants. The restaurants that we order from, they're getting stuff catered because they were complaining about the food early and the league did something about that. The league don't care as much about us. One lunch, and I tell Mark this, one lunch was grilled cheese sandwiches with tomatoes in them, garlic knots, and tomato bisque. Like, can we get a vegetable or a meat, something for, like, this is, I felt like I was in the 3rd grade. Grilled cheese with garlic knots. Like, who in the world said, I'm gonna feed a bunch of adults grilled cheese sandwich with tomatoes in the grilled cheese? I don't know who likes tomatoes in the grilled cheese. We can take a poll on that. I'm sure the Boston Globe will have a sophisticated poll on the type of grilled cheese we like, but I don't like tomatoes in mine. And then tomato bisque on top of that. If you ain't got enough tomatoes in your grilled cheese, you get a tomato bisque. So that be lunch. And if you don't like that, you can have potato chip lunch. Okay, I have a couple bags of barbecue chips. So it is not good out here. It is that's been the most disappointing part of it. We've been making it, you know, me and Mark both eat well, but it is, in terms of like it's gonna be nutritious dinners, nutritious salads, good stuff for good. No. Sorry.
Okay, you're really making me feel bad about having you there now, Gary. We'll owe you a couple of good dinners when you get there, for sure, right? All right, so some basketball questions. One other question. This one's probably best for you, Gary, but for sure, Mark, I'd like to have you chime in as well. But the Celtics locker room incident the other night, you were right on scene. You were kind of sort of a witness to that, at least through the audio part of that experience. Can you, many readers wanted to know more about what it was like as that situation developed and everything you saw and heard when the Celtics had their locker room issues.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, I've been accused of exaggerating the situation because but I've never met a player until like the player left the team who was like, yeah, we had a knockdown, drag out argument in the locker room. Like every player is taught to downplay these types of situations. And unfortunately, I mean, this was one of those situations where guys are just really upset and there was a lot of banging against the wall. Marcus Smart comes out and says some, you know, couple cuss words. And it was, I've never seen something last for 20 to 25 minutes. Like this was a elongated, big time, like argument where many voices, not Marcus Smart only. People always, Marcus started, Marcus did not finish it. Marcus walked to the bathroom because these are not state-of-the-art arenas. So the bathroom is outside. So essentially you have to walk outside to use like the full bathroom. So Marcus went to the bathroom, and while that was going on, there was still yelling and screaming and stuff throwing in the locker room. And I haven't seen it go on that long in my years. I've seen stuff, locker rooms closed for 15 minutes, guys going at it, you hear some screaming, but this was literally 20 to 25 minutes. And so it was not a good situation. I had someone in the room said he was crazy. And so it seems like they all settled their differences. There was a couple of conversations afterwards. Brad met with the core of the team later that night at the hotel. Marcus Smart walked out of that meeting. And Kemba was able to get him and Jaylen Brown on the phone and kind of settle their differences. So it was something significant. It was not some kind of like two guys going at each other like things happen in a loss. This was significant. And so I'd want to tell the readers that it was not something that I embellished or made up. Like, it was so bad. NBA folks were outside the room locker room, and they were looking around like in angst, like they were uncomfortable with how long and how loud it was. They were looking at each other like, what the hell is going on? Because they're waiting for the team to come out to be ready for interviews. And so all of us were kind of waiting outside, and it's like when you're outside and inside a room, you just hear screaming and bumping, and you know, it's like that. You're like, whoa. And for a long time, you kind of wonder what's happening.
And Mark, were you what was your take on that situation? Were you surprised to hear this? Because up until that point, the Celtics were largely viewed as a team that had pretty good team chemistry.
You know, I was actually on the Miami side where it was calm, and a lot of kumbaya, a lot of cockiness and confidence there. But if I'm the Celtics fan, I'm happy. I just saw the Clippers basically decide they wanted to leave, and they showed no heart. And the ladies that came here to support them showed 10 times more excitement than the Clippers did show in that Game 7. So I don't mind that. I mean, in college, when I played in college, we had fights in the locker room, and that shows me the guys care, and they were upset about the loss, and they knew they should have won. As long as nobody gets punched in the face, sometimes those things are good because people get things out of their system. You know, let people know how they feel and their frustration. And last game, I thought they played great. I'm really excited to see how the Celtics play tomorrow. You can't bring that game back, but perhaps because there was so much anger that they let out, that it might have even brought them together.
Well, that said, that was another one of our readers' questions, leads right into that, was do you think the bubble helped, hurt, or didn't matter to the Celtics during the playoffs? You know, we know what they were before the shutdown. And then there was, you know, obviously this was just a different stretch of their season. So yeah, did the bubble help?
I think it's helped all the teams in a sense that you could concentrate just on basketball. The families didn't come too late. I know there was certainly some loneliness here and some, you know, fatigue of being stuck in one place. But in terms of a basketball standpoint, they weren't getting on planes. They're always getting a day off. And I think that's a big reason why I think the playoffs have been really good. And also, I expected there to be a lot more injuries than there have been. Hasn't been a lot of injuries. And it could have an effect on how the NBA conducts business in the future. Maybe they go to more of a baseball model where if you go to LA, you're going to be there for 3 or 4 days and you're going to play that Lakers and Clippers game back to back or have a space in between, but you're going to be in one place for a few days. Maybe you play Golden State, take a day off, take a bus to Sacramento, and in that case, you don't get on a plane. Same way if you play the Nets or Brooklyn or Milwaukee and Chicago. I think from this, they're realizing that I remember, you guys know how it is, how stupid the schedule is sometimes. A team will play Sacramento and then go play Phoenix and then come back up and play Golden State. That just doesn't make any sense. So I think there probably could be more of a baseball schedule model in the future to give the players more rest, be in one city for longer, and hopefully have great basketball like we've seen here.
Gary, did you want to answer that one too about the bubble?
I think the bubble has brought some teams together, and some teams, they weren't so close, and it doesn't make you closer just being around each other all the time. I think that's the thing, like with no families here, you basically are by yourself or with your teammates and your coaches. And then I think players from other teams got a chance to hang out, and I think that was a good thing too. Guys who don't see each other normally got a chance to do dinner because the players we were kind of blocked off. Like we couldn't, the players, when they negotiated this, they didn't want to see media members just milling around when they were eating and things like that. So we were blocked off from a lot of the places that they could go. They could come to our side. They could walk over to our pool, hang out. There was a couple of players who came to the media or the pool on our side, but we could not go over there near their hotel, nothing like that. So I think some of these guys were able to get to know each other, hang out. But, when it gets 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, guys start getting homesick. And it's only so much video games and hanging at the bar and fishing you can do. These guys want to go to their favorite restaurants. They want to see their families. They want to go get back to their hometown. So like Mark said, I think some teams like the Clippers were just ready to go home. Like they were just like, yeah, we lost. We're going to take the heat, but tomorrow night I'm going to be at home. And I think that the Celtics have been a tough enough team, and so is the Heat. And the Lakers came down here with a plan, and the Nuggets obviously hung out, have hung on, and played well to know, like, hey, we might as well finish this thing off. And that's kind of how we feel as media members. Like, we don't want to go home now. Like, there's some media members that went home a week ago and kind of said they wanted to see this thing through. They wanted to be here through the NBA Finals. And I think that a lot of us want to see this whole thing completed.
Right. Great. All right. So another common theme for our readers was to hear your takes on the way the playoffs are shaping up right now. So maybe it'd be great if Gary did the Eastern Conference and Mark did the Western Conference. What are your thoughts on? Let's start with Mark. What are your thoughts on the Western Conference Finals? I know there's Game 3 tonight. What have you seen, and what do you expect to happen in that series?
The Nuggets remind me of Scooby-Doo and Friends. They're those pesky kids. They won't go away. And the way they played in Game 2, this should be a tied series. They have proven that they could play with the Lakers, but the Lakers are just so popular and such darlings, as Boston people probably roll their eyes about, that like you would think that the Lakers just beat up the Nuggets in both of these games. So I'm really curious to see how Denver responds tonight, because they've been great in coming back from adversity. They've been down 3-1 twice and come back to win. I also want to see what kind of response the Lakers have. Do they get relaxed? Do they kind of feel like, we're waltzing to the finals, we got it on easy street now? But they basically had a Hail Mary to win this past game. So I think it's important for the Lakers not to get their foot off the gas, win tonight. It's one thing to come back from 3-1. It's another thing to come back from 3-0 with a team that has LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So if the Lakers can win tonight, I think there's no miracles left, even for these pesky kids.
Gary, what's your take on the Eastern Conference Finals? Game 4.
Fascinating. Obviously, the biggest game of the series, especially for the Celtics. The Celtics gave away the first 2 games. Miami made all the big plays down the stretch. They took the game from Boston. The Celtics have outplayed the Miami in most of the first 3 games, obviously in Game 3, but in Game 2, they led by 14 early in the fourth quarter. You can't give that lead up. They led by 17 late in the first half in Game 2, and they lost, and they came back and took a 5-point lead in the fourth quarter and still lost that game. So the Celtics have to prove that they can. Eric Spoelstra's a coaching genius. He's got 3 days off to make adjustments to the Celtics adjustments. So the Celtics better expect a different Miami team than the one that showed up in Game 3. If they can hold on and get Game 4, then I think they take the momentum back of the series, and then you got a best-of-3, winner take all. So the Celtics just have to stick to what they're doing, stick to their principles, playing well against the zone, and not just play well down the stretch. They can't let Jimmy Butler become Jimmy Butler. He'll take the game away from you. He made 3 steals in the last 5 minutes of Game 2. I mean, if you let him, he's the most probably interesting superstar in our league in years, because you don't ever look at his numbers. He's not averaging 29 points a game, 15 rebounds, but he's not the guy you want to see in the other team, because he's going to make the play, whether it be the steal, the rebound, the and one. Like, he is a big money, big game guy, and don't put it in his hands. And so I think they learned how to guard Goran Dragic. They still haven't known what to do with Bam Adebayo, who looks like Shaq out there. But if they can give up that stuff but then shut down the other guys, I think they got a good chance in the series.
Great. Yeah, Game 4 should be great tomorrow. Time for one more reader question, and then I'll ask you guys for a prediction on the finals, right? The last reader question is, what are players doing on their off days? You mentioned that you're separated from them, but you must have some intel about what's happening with the players. And so the reader's question is, what are the players doing on their off days? How tricked out is the bubble to keep everyone in it? And Have you heard of much pushback from players maybe unhappy with the restrictions?
If you are so much to walk a quarter of an inch outside of the bubble, you got to quarantine for another 7 days, maybe more. So it's not worth playing with. Remember what happened to Rashawn Holmes? There was also another player, Caboclo from the Rockets. Both of them trying to get takeout, and they messed up. And so, you know, I think part of the reason why me and Gary never left and came back was because we didn't want to quarantine again. For the players, it's limited, but I think they hang out with each other a lot now that their families are here. You know, I see a lot of them. They love this restaurant called the Three Bridges, which we're not allowed to go to. And they like to go there with either their teammates or their loved ones if they're here and just hang out and drink. And from that restaurant, it's really pretty. So that's kind of their spot where media is not allowed to go. So a lot of what they like to do, we don't get to see because they like, and it's weird because even when I go ride the bike or when Gary goes to run, we'll see. I saw Brad Stevens today walking with his wife. You know, I'll see Spoelstra, I'll see the Nuggets president and the general manager, but rarely ever do I see a player walking around or a play. You know, you see them on the campus a little bit doing things, but typically when I see them on downtime, they're going to that Three Bridges restaurant where they can kind of hide out and do their thing and not be bothered by us.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think they're swimming. I think they're eating dinner. I think they're playing a lot of video games. I think they're reading books. I think they're just trying to find things to do. Milwaukee, before they got kicked out, had like video games. I'm not talking about like a system. They had like arcade games like Miss Pac-Man and two big old and a pinball machine in their lounge room. So they are accommodating these guys with everything they can possibly do without them having to leave. Now it's tough because, you know, these guys want to go to dinner, they want to leave, but they just haven't been able to do that. So I do think there's a level of boredom that could occur.
Yeah. All right, and then we're just about out of time, but everyone wants to know what your predictions are for the NBA Finals matchup and how you see that one playing out. So maybe the national anthem is over, and Gary can start that one. Oh,
well, I'll go first.
We'll go to Mark first then.
Yeah. I will say that the Celtics will come back with a boost from Gordon Hayward, make it to the NBA Finals, where they'll end up losing to the Lakers in 6 games.
Yeah, I do think it's the Lakers' year. I just think what they've been through, and then the fact that they came down with more mental fortitude than the Clippers. The Clippers might be a more talented team, but the fact that the Lakers played no games, they are all business. It's a business trip, and they've treated everything pretty seriously. They've lost a couple of games, but they've always come back. I think it's just their year. I do think the Celtics make it out of the series if they play the way they're supposed to, which I think they can. But I think obviously the world, the country would love another Lakers-Celtics matchup. That would be great, especially for what we've all been through over the last few months.
Yeah, definitely. That would be a great matchup for sure. Good national TV and good matchup. So great. Well, I thank you both for joining us. This was really great. I hope our readers enjoyed it. Their book comes out on October 6th. It's called The Spencer Haywood Rule. So go pick up a copy of that, and we'll have a replay link sent to everybody who signed up for this Zoom session. Again, thanks very much, guys. We appreciate it. And to our subscribers, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time with another sports Zoom session sometime soon.
Take care.